Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for organizing this wonderful event. Super interesting and yeah, very relevant in today's world. We've heard great speakers, great analysis, so thank you so much. It was very enriching for me as well. You know, oil and gas is difficult to transport, bits and bytes as well, so it took us a bit of time, but now we're here, you know. Let's not talk about bits and bytes pipelines then, you know, and stick to oil and gas. Perhaps that's... Anyway, yeah, my name is Hubert, Hubertus, Umberto for Italians. And Ruel, yeah, could be French, perhaps, could be German. So, but at least European. And but born and raised in Netherlands. Thank you so much, and I'm very happy as well to be a visiting scholar in Hungary right now for a year in Budapest with the MC Matthias Corvinus Collegium. That's a very enriching environment for me as well, because as we all know, Europe is small, however also very huge, because the distance between Amsterdam and Budapest is just a 2-hour flight. But sometimes the understandings may be, you know, from Pluto to Mars, you know. Anyway, I'd like to talk to you and take I've got 10 minutes left, I think, to talk to you about and to share with you the state of the right in the Netherlands 20 years after Pim Fortuyn. I should give a hand. Yes, please, next slide. Next slide, please. Bits and bytes, and here they are. This picture, just look at it 5 minutes or not, because it's not the most pleasant picture, but it happened exactly more or less 20 years ago in Netherlands, which was a absolutely, one could say, the biggest political event in 500 years. And that's something. William of Orange was killed 500 years before that, and then suddenly we had this, the first political murder in 500 years. That was really something that shook the Netherlands. And now in Netherlands, in this month of May, there are plenty of all kinds of events and reflections and how did we get to this stage that a politician, an emerging politician, a politician that basically rose up out of more or less the blue, managed to get to the center of the political landscape and was absolutely in a very good position to immediately become the first prime minister of the Netherlands. But then this happened. Just, I think this was a week or 2 weeks before the elections. On the 6th of May 2002, he was shot by. Okay, I really always am very cautious in trying to stick labels too much. But yes, one could say it was clearly a left-wing animal environmentalist activist that did this, Volkert van der Graaf. And I'm saying this also because in those days when this happened, I was a very active member of the Christian Democratic Party in Netherlands. I was an elected member, I think, by that time, even at the municipal level. But I was very active in the party as such. I was giving trainings and all kinds of things. And me, myself, I was a bit scared of the guy. I was just a bit scared because I thought, wow, if a populist politician can just rise up out of the nothing and get to the center of the political landscape, wow. But the super interesting thing is just recently I listened again to the last interview he gave before this happened. He gave a radio interview, 2 hours. He was on a popular radio station, and the DJ was really, and they were jollily engaging and talking about all kinds of things. And then he left the studio, and then this happened. He was shot down on the parking place after just when he left the radio studio. And I remember that moment very much as well. And I was really a bit afraid of the guy because I thought, wow, you know, what's this? But I listened again to this final interview and I thought, what was I afraid of? Because even his views on call it immigration, on the state of call it government public policies. yeah, you know, okay, he was absolutely clear, and he was very prolific. He was very, you know, like provocative, but basically they were relatively mild views in comparison to many of the views we hear all around Europe. So I think now, where was I afraid of? And I really think, wow, this would have been a great opportunity also for Dutch politics to be, yes, to get that breakthrough and to get something different. Because if I could like to have the next slide, I've got 6 minutes left. We can even continue to the next slide. Who was Pim Fortuyn? Maybe many of you know him, maybe not. I mean, again, Europe is small, but also big. Pim Fortuyn was an absolutely fascinating figure. He was a sociologist with a degree from Amsterdam University, the Free University, got a PhD from Groningen University, got into a professorship at Erasmus University, and he also politically moved even from left-wing center to what later on then was called very right-wing. But the question is, indeed, perhaps we'll get to talk about what's right-wing, what's conservatism. Now, anyway, but he moved at least what you could say from a Marxist towards a culturally conservative thinker. And he established his own party. There were loads of issues, but finally he established his own party. And when you look at his political views, he was very clear on the issue of immigration. He lived in Rotterdam in the midst of one of the suburbs where he saw that the multicultural society had failed. This might sound very, 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 very blunt, but he called it like this. Multiculturalism doesn't work, or at least it didn't work out in the way as the Dutch tried to look at it. And he said, you know, the first thing what we need to do is just to stop immigration, fix it, and then we can see how to continue. And that was something like unheard. Okay, we heard something in the 80s, but where there was a center party, which was very small, but they were also very vocal and said, like, you know, Netherlands is full. And that was something like, oh, wow, that resembled something like, you know, Germany somewhere far away. So please, let's not go there. But Pim Fortuyn, he could say it, and he said it. And what I nowadays, 20 years after his assassination, when I look back, I think like, wow, you know, this can happen if societies respond too aggressively to a bit of divergent views, so to speak. Because I clearly think, if I look now, I recently saw how in those days when he was assassinated, one of the leaders of the current biggest party, the VVD, call it the economic liberals, the party of Mark Rutte, the prime minister, the minister of finance, he was really in one of the interviews, TV interviews, responding to Pim Fortuyn like, you know, oh wow, this person is dangerous, he's dangerous, he's dangerous. And these kind of rhetoric really absolutely contributed to this mindset like, wow, this guy is dangerous, at least to certain kind of, to the political establishment. But he was actually not dangerous. He was a very mild thinker, he also had a clear view like, okay, if it doesn't work, then I'm easily giving up. He was not something like, once I'm in power, I'll stick to power. No, he was definitely a heartfelt a Democrat. He was also Catholic, and the funny thing is, when he grew up, he dreamt to become the Pope. Then at a certain point in time, he realized that perhaps may not be that possible for me, so let's continue and go for something else. No, this is not how it went, but he absolutely, and he said, I'm a Catholic, I was baptized, so and he absolutely was very actively communicating also with bishops about all kinds of theological issues. And he knew, as an openly homosexual, that his type of lifestyle didn't fit the Catholic dominant view, let's say. But he was not so much an activist for it. He considered the Dutch society like, hey, we've accepted this, so we got over it. And let's not make a big issue out of this. And he was, in a certain sense, even using it against immigration from certain countries like Turkey or Morocco, or with, like, you know, they seem to have a problem with me, or they seem to have, and actually when you look at statistics in Netherlands, I think 80% of the Moroccan Dutch seem to have problems with sexual identities such as homosexuality. Does that fit? Every society is different. The Dutch society is like it is. In Netherlands, basically, it is not a big issue. And he also didn't make a bigger issue out of this than it was. Just after his assassination, we had the elections, and his party at least became the second largest after the Christian Democrats, which was also a surprise, because he himself had been demonizing, one could say, the Social Democrats so much that they more than halved. And the Christian Democrats, he always had been a bit more favorable towards the Christian Democrats, so they actually benefited from his more or less lenient view. Now we got 5 minutes left, or 3 minutes left. I've got 20 more slides. Okay. Next slide, please. The political landscape. Oh, wow. Well, anyway, before 1994, there were three major parties: the Christian Democrats, the Social Democrats, and the Liberal Democrats. They always, the Liberal Democrats actually were always third, and then it was either the Christian Democrats or the Social Democrats becoming the biggest. Next slide, please. Oh, and then we had something revolutionary since 1994, which was called the Purple Coalition, because for the first time in history there was a coalition possible without the Christian Democrats. That was historical for Netherlands. So you had the Social Democrats, the Liberal Democrats, and the Social Liberals together saying, hey, we can do it without the Christian Democrats. That was also the time that the Netherlands decided to go for same-sex marriage and all these kind of, call it, whatever you think of it, but liberal issues that were very important to those parties. I'm not saying that the Christian Democrats were anti, but for them it was not such a big issue. It was not such a activist kind of a thing. Next slide. Pim Fortuyn used the time that this Purple Coalition was in power, so to speak, and he wrote a book, The Ruins of 8 Years of Purple Coalition. And that caused a big, a big role, let's say. That was a big thing. He really crashed what this Purple Coalition did, and that was especially on the issues of the multicultural society, totally failed, but also government bureaucracy. He was very much thinking like, the autonomy should be back in the hands of the professional. If you look at healthcare, healthcare servants, civil servants there, and teachers, they're totally overloaded with protocols, and he said, away with that. Next slide. If we then look at the political landscape in Netherlands now, okay, this actually should have been but it's good that I get it now all at once. Very clear, because what I wanted to do, I tried to would like to take you per party where the party stands. What I try to do is I try to draw a matrix. If you look at Europe, what are the two major issues, in my view, that how we can look at the political landscape in Europe? Then it's the issue of wealth distribution, and it's identity. Wealth distribution, from economic liberalism towards socialism, like income equality, versus a bit more of that, versus a personal. Call it just an economy without much of government interference. And the other angle is the identity issue. Here you see identity. Is it conservatism, the social identity, or is it the individual identity, which I call the cultural, dynamical, and liberal view? If I put currently all the parties in Netherlands in this angle, then basically what I do see is that more than half of the current parliament could be put on that center-right, right-wing parties kind of line. Currently we have a coalition of the liberal Democrats, the economic liberal Democrats, the party of the Prime Minister Mark Rutte. They moved through the years a bit more to the center. They were much more economically liberal. They moved more towards the center, being very social liberal. Then we have the social liberals, D66, the second largest, totally socially liberal, and economically a bit in the middle. Then you've got the Christian Democrats, And you've got the Party for Freedom, hidden behind the blue, which is the populist party of Geert Wilders, who would have liked to draw Mohammed pictures in the parliament, but was probably a bit shocked by the responses all over the world that he got and decided not to do this. But we've got the liberals, the Christian Democrats, the social liberals, and we've got the Christian Union, which is a Orthodox Christian party, but relatively socially quite, let's say, greenish. So that still works as a mix. It's an interesting mix, but all the other parties, then, if you would count, and so the right basically is in a strong position. It's only tremendously fragmented, as well as is the left, because currently we've got already 20 parties in parliament. We recently got a new one, yes, indeed, Volt, the pan-European party. They had a role, and one member dropped out and started her own party, so we got number 20, and probably, you know, soon we'll have number 21. But this is something what we see, I think, all over Europe. Something, yeah, depends what you want to do about it, either a threshold or to think in a circle, in a cyclical way, like, you know, things come with waves. Next election, yeah, it will be hard. The future in Netherlands, as in many other countries, will be, now we've got a coalition of 4 parties. Question is, will we have a next election with 5 parties? Or will we have perhaps 1 or 2 bigger parties that manage to get that center? But then absolutely, I think, the issue of the social identity needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, I think I'm a bit worried then if that issue is not being addressed. Thank you so much.